Hello, and welcome to Season 4 of the Wedding Whisperer podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Burton, wedding concierge and owner of Simply Love Studio, coming to you from the heart of Central Kentucky. Around here, weddings are more than a single day. They're about family tradition, a little bit of chaos, and a whole lot of love. And my job is to help you navigate all of that with clarity and confidence while staying on budget. At Simply Love Studio, I help couples plan their weddings for free, connecting you with the right vendors, realistic timelines, and thoughtful guidance so that you can enjoy the process. This season, we're diving deeper into real connections, what works, what doesn't, and how to plan a wedding that truly feels like you. Whether you're newly engaged, deep in planning, or just love a good behind the scenes wedding story, you're in the right place. Looking at catering as a whole for everyone in 2026, what are you kind of seeing as far as pricing? Has pricing increased from last year? Are we kind of staying about the same? What do you think is the minimum amount couples should budget per person as they're working on a budget?
Unfortunately, food costs are still going up, beef in particular. I'm still working on 2026 prices. Probably 2026 didn't bump a full 10%, but we bumped a couple of bucks. I start kind of with a baseline number. And in my case, my baseline number is about $15. It's probably going to 16 next year. I was kind of looking at some numbers. And that $15 represents the non-alcoholic drink station and the coffee, the salad, a couple of sides, that piece. That's the chafing fuel and all of that. And then from there, we add, okay, you want chicken, you want beef. Well, what kind of beef do you want? Do you want brisket? Okay, brisket's on the lower end of beef. Do you want beef tenderloin? Beef tenderloin's on the high end of beef. And so I sit with I've got a little list. It's like, okay, chicken is this. A bone-in airline chicken breast, it's more. So it's this. And so that's how you get the number. I think our double entree buffet has been about 32, starts at about 32. Probably we're going to 32, to 33, 34. Fortunately, food has not been deflationary. We just keep going up, but they are small ups.
As a whole, looking at a wedding menu from different caterers in general, are there any types of food that are more affordable per se, or if they want to stay on the lower end of food costs, are there any types of food to look for?
Chicken and pork is going to be cheaper than chicken and beef. I mean, beef is just high right now. Boneless, skinless chicken thighs are great. They hold well. They actually improve if they sit in a sauce. They are tender. They kind of that fall apart. If somebody comes to me and they go, well, I don't have the budget for a cook's tent with all this stuff in it, what can I have? I'm going to sell them a buffet. Everything's going to go on the buffet. If there is any room in the budget, I'm going to tell them, let's do a water glass, a cloth napkin, and a fork, knife, and spoon from the rental company. And then let's do acrylic or bamboo plates. When the photographer comes in, the tables are set. Linen to the floor, napkin, silverware, water glass on the table, all of that. And then the guests go to the buffet. And if you do a boneless, skinless chicken thigh in a sauce and like a sliced pork loin and a roasted potato and a Southern style green bean, there's that $32, $33, $34 a person kind of is where you're landing. Added cheese and charcuterie board, which is about 10. So you're at 42, 43. If you do a 4-hour full open bar with us, it's 22 a head. We tend to say, we're at like 67 person plus some staff. And you're going to have in that scenario, 3, 4, 5 people, depending on some issues, like for instance, whether we have to do a flip.
What are some of the misconceptions that you think couples and maybe moms have of wedding catering and food as a whole going into the wedding planning process? I know there's a couple of things that I see on my end. I want to see if yours are the same misconceptions that I see.
Well, I think the first question is, what kind of wedding did mom have? if mom and dad had a cake and punch reception in the country church, they're not really prepared for what weddings in 2026 look like.
Our average for Kentucky in 2024, because that's what just came out, was 22,000. The US is 33,000. So,
I would say my clients probably starting at a 25 to 30 on the low end, and that's a small guest count.
Mhm.
I mean, we typically do several weddings that were in excess of 75 and several that were in excess of 100. And part of this is how many people you're having. Because obviously the wedding that you can have, even a very nice wedding for less money if you're having 70 guests versus having 170 or 250. But the problem is whether it is 22,000 or 33,000, the weddings that everybody's seeing on Instagram, in the wedding magazines, those are not 22 and $33,000 weddings. Those are weddings where they spent 22 or $33,000 on the florals. And that's where the problem lies, is that people have no idea what a wedding costs. And so then they get in the process, and then I send them a quote. I had a father of the bride call me and want to put money down. And I don't take money without giving somebody a proposal, because I need them to see, okay, what do you want? Okay, this is what this costs for me. And when I do proposals, I try to be as transparent as I can possibly be with how much everything costs. Okay, this is your rentals, and this is the breakdown of the rentals. This is how much staff. This is how much this is what your gratuity will be, so that people go in it with their eyes wide open, because quite frankly, even as long as their guest count stays in the range, their not ultimate numbers are probably going to be higher, because almost everybody adds to the rentals. Everybody, you got to add a gratuity. I don't put a gratuity on until the final bill. It says that everywhere. It says it on proposals. It says it in the contract. And then I send people their final bill and they go, "What's this?" And I'm like, "That's the gratuity that you've been knowing you were going to pay, but nobody does the math on." And so then I do the math and they go, "Oh, well, that's what 15% of food and beverage is." It's like, yeah, that's what it is. So I would say I just think people just have no idea what it's going to cost. And they don't think, okay, what does it cost if I go out and have a nice dinner? And okay, multiply that times 150.
one of the first things that I typically hear is that we are going to do appetizers as a meal because it's going to be cheaper. What are your thoughts on that?
Never. It's never going to be cheaper because labor. So the truth of the matter is appetizers. Now the caveat is going to be like a cheese and charcuterie board, but primarily appetizers are all things that need to be rolled and stuffed and cut and filled and all of these things that takes more labor. And you offer more options. I no, at least not with us. With us, a double entree buffet with chicken and pork is going to be less, because just off the cuff, I'm going to charge you. So I'm going to tell you need something big like a cheese and charcuterie. So there's 10. And then we're going to charge you 5-ish per item. So 5 items is probably the absolute minimum we're going to do, because that's a sandwich or two, a couple hot appetizers, something else. More likely, I'm going to do 6 or 8. 6 or 8, you're at 30, you're at 40, depending on what they were. You add crab cakes, you add shrimp cocktail, you probably add another buck or two. No, not cheaper. I mean, you can price it with somebody at least, but with somebody like me who's making things from scratch, most of the stuff, no. I mean, our crab cakes start as crab and panko and mayonnaise and eggs and aromatics. If people are making stuff like that, I mean, yes, I mean, meatballs are cheap, but we don't do a lot of meatballs for weddings.
You don't?
I don't.
That hurts my soul because you make every single one of those by hand, and I love them at bridal shows. Other misconceptions, and I actually did a whole podcast on this. I think it was maybe season 2, and it's actually had about 300 downloads. It's up there at the top of the list, is tastings for weddings. Because a lot of what you see on TV is everyone going to food tastings. That is not necessarily a reality in the wedding world, particularly in Kentucky. It may be in California and New York, where the average wedding is 60 to 100,000, but that
I was
is
gonna
not
say even more
here.
than
So walk me through what is a realistic tasting. I know yours is different.
right.
There are catering companies here that have done free tastings in the past. They are changing that this year just
Okay.
because tastings are so expensive, and it's not just your chef making dinner for 2 people. Just give me the quick version of why tastings cost money for couples to do and to attend.
It's both the cost of the food and it's the cost of preparing it. I will tell people that there's a little bit more labor doing something for 50 people as doing it for 10, but some of the labor is the same. Um, so, I mean, for us, I can't afford to, nor do I have the time to do free tastings for anyone that walks through the door. And sometimes I get an email that says, "Hey, we'd like to schedule a tasting." And I just grin because, well, what are you going to taste? We make 8, 10 kinds of chicken. We make a bunch of different beefs and porks and potatoes, all of those things. I start everyone with a proposal. Doesn't cost you anything to have me do a proposal and pull rentals and do all that. That's a cost of business for me. But as soon as you get to the tasting point, partially also because I only have one date, I need you to be serious. So if I've sent you a proposal and you have to think, yeah, I really think I'm probably going to hire these people if food's good, I make you give me a $500 date deposit. And that is non-refundable. It's mine. Pays for the time I've spent, the time I'll spend at the tasting, the time Sadie spends shopping and prepping, and all of that. If you book us, it all goes to your contract. If you don't book us, I keep it. Now, to be honest, with very few exceptions, people book us. Now, smaller things, like occasionally, like I had a mother of the groom call me for a rehearsal dinner. That's enough smaller that we're going to charge her $250 to do a tasting. But for us, you have to get a proposal. You have to pay a date deposit, and then you come for your tasting.
One of the other things I hear a lot, I don't know if you hear this. I don't want to say every meeting, we'll say half of my meetings, someone will make the comment that whenever you tell someone it's a wedding, the price just gets doubled automatically. I do not necessarily think that is true. Do you hear that on your end that, oh, it's going to cost more to have this catered because it's a wedding than it would if it were something else?
You don't hear that. I do think there is that perception. And I would tell you something. I don't know that I think that we charge more necessarily for weddings. However, we probably should. And this is not a knock at our brides per se, but to be honest, compared to a corporate client, brides are lots more work. Lots more work. Corporate client has a menu, a budget, a theme, away we go. Our brides, bless their lovely hearts, they change their minds. And they require significantly more hand-holding because most of the time when you're doing a corporate event, the person doing that, this is what they do. They're an event planner. And so I'll be honest, one of the best things for people having full service planners is that I'm out of the middle a little bit, so I don't have to do quite as much hand holding. I don't dislike hand holding, quite frankly. The reason I run the kind of wedding style business that I do with the numbers that we do is I like going to the rental companies. I like talking about flowers. I like talking about paper goods. I like talking about linens. All of that is in my wheelhouse. So I enjoy that. No, I don't think there's necessarily a wedding upcharge. on our end, I can see if some people do. And part of that is time. I can remember years and years and years ago, there was a caterer. He is now long retired. And he said that he used to, in his contract, have a certain number of hours that he was willing to have conversations with the client, because he found that sometimes he ended up being mom's therapy in the wedding planning process.
You talked about doing the proposal and getting to the tasting part. You will go back and forth on that proposal and those food choices probably 6, 8, 10 times sometimes. And that's why versus the corporate, you probably send one over. They're like, oh, let's change this beef to this beef. And you're like, okay, and we're done. So while there may be sometimes, maybe not for you, but other vendors, that there may be some small additional fees because it is a wedding. Those, in my opinion, are justified based on the amount of work behind the scenes that a couple would never even know existed. Then a couple more things I just want to touch on real quick when it comes to misconceptions. I think one of those is if they are using a caterer solely for like a drop off purpose. We'll say an Italian restaurant. So when you do a drop off service, that you're not going to need to have any servers or anyone there to take care of the buffet. That is the farthest thing from the truth, because even if you are doing just a drop off service of any type of caterer, you definitely need someone there to make sure that there's chafing dishes or there's something, there for it to go in. You need to make sure that it is in the proper order from, meats to the rolls. I honestly don't even know that I could get that correct. And whenever the green beans are gone, you need another tray of green beans to come out. So there's so many things, and somebody's going to drop a spoon in the floor at some point. Somebody's got to be there to get a clean one out or to get that one cleaned. I think there's a lot of times those are kind of the things that people maybe forget about, or they just think that they don't need anybody there. Or they may think that, hey, I have a day of coordinator. They're going to be the ones just overseeing that. And that is farthest from the truth as well. Your wedding coordinator is not your caterer unless you talk about that ahead of time and they have brought in additional staff. Don't ever assume that that is someone else's job unless they are designated for that.
That's the piece that I think that you really need to hit on is you're going to need to pay for those people somewhere. It's either your planner coordinator is going to bring in staff, and some of them are quite capable. If you tell them, hey, I'm getting drop off from XYZ, they're more than willing and able to arrange to have some service staff. But you are going to have some. It's just it's the part of it that I think that people just don't, they kind of gloss over the fact that all of this stuff takes bodies. And I do my best to be as transparent with okay, you need this many people, you need this many people. And I know this is what I do for a living. So I know, okay, the minimum number of people that I pretty much need is about 3 people to get all of the stuff set up that needs to be set up for clients. So, I mean, the truth of the matter is that 3 people is probably good from, I mean, if you're having 50 people, I'm still probably bringing in 3 people because we still have to set up chafers. We still have to set up a non-alcoholic drink. There's this almost like this minimum threshold you have to hit with bodies. And then what do we need beyond that? I agree that we don't need any people because it's casual. It's like, yeah, you do. And there's trash. I mean, one of the big questions is who's taking the trash out?
Well, we have to clean the tables before we can even get to the trash.
I mean, but almost every venue, with very few exceptions, requires all the trash to be out at the end of the night. I mean, one of the places every once in a while I get burned, and not because in my vision I've done anything wrong, but because once again, people haven't read their contracts, is I quote staff for 5 hours. It's not usually enough. The only time that 5 hours is enough staff is if there's a lot of disposable, it's a short wedding, we're not going to have a bunch of dancing, and there's not a bar. Otherwise, staff is on site usually somewhere between 6 and 8 hours. But I don't know how long until you give me your final timeline. And I don't typically get a final timeline. I get usually a timeline from a planner week of the wedding. Month before the wedding, we have a rough timeline, but 6, 8, 10, 12 months out, people don't know. They don't know what time they're getting married. There's all this stuff being figured out. So our policy is we quote 5 hours of service, and it says overtime will be billed at this per person, per this. You will be charged on your final bill based on the timeline you provide. So people get their staffing thing, and I don't know if anybody else does it. In the corporate world, they call BEOs, they're banquet event orders. On my world, I call them catering details for weddings, and they get sent to the bride and the planner about 2 weeks before the wedding. Usually the Tuesday. So if the wedding is on the 10th, I'm going to send those about the 2nd. Usually Tuesday, I send them. Tuesday, Wednesday, kind of depends on my life if I get them done. But Tuesday, Wednesday, they get sent. They usually get sent to the bride. If I have a planner or coordinator, I'll copy them to them. And this is predicated on the final guest count being due on Friday. Now, I've already had to guarantee numbers to the rental company by then if I'm doing the rentals for the client. And the reality is you might be dithering back and forth about 1 or 2 or 10 guests, but it's probably not affecting how many tables you have and some of that stuff. So that's already set. But when I send catering details, it's all the things. This is what cocktail hour is. This is where it is, because some venues, okay, is it at the Spring House at Castle and Key, or is it everything going to be in the Shooking Building? Where's it going to be? Okay, what is the setup like at cocktail hour? Do we have a 6-foot round table? Do we have 2 banquet tables? Is there a bar there? Is there glassware there? All of that. Okay, this is the main course. This is on the buffet. This is what's being preset. This is what my dietaries look like. So say we have a buffet and we're having scalloped potatoes, and one of our guests or a couple of our guests are dairy free. And so we're doing some roasted potatoes for those people. It's like, okay, who are they? What table are they at? So that we can figure out getting that plate to them. But it's all of those things. They need to be read. We had a wedding this fall. Bless her. The bride changed her signature drink. And somehow in the process of things, I didn't get that in my notes. So I sent a catering detail that we were doing strawberry margaritas for our signature drink. And we get to the venue and we're setting up. And I'm over at the bar with bartenders, and I look at the sign, and the sign says that we're doing White Russians for her signature drink. There is nothing like this White Russians. Strawberry margarita is not the same. There's not a single ingredient that goes over. The saving grace in life is espresso martinis have been the thing. Earlier in the year, I bought a case of Kahlua. So I was like, I grabbed one of my servers and was like, hey, I need you to go to the office. Grab me some more vodka, grab me some Kahlua, and then grab every bit of half and half and cream that's in the refrigerator and bring it back, because apparently we're making White Russians. And that's what we did. But her catering details said strawberry margaritas, and the bride didn't catch it. The planner didn't catch it. So that's what we brought. Moral of the story. Read all your things. Read your contract, read your proposal, read your final invoice, and make sure they match. Because we're all human, and I do my best to have our details right. But I just sent out for a wedding in April. They came for their tasting. Clients are both physicians in residency. So getting everybody's schedule coordinated. They came for a tasting in November. I was drowning in November between the end of wedding season and then into December, and we've been tweaking some stuff at the bar. Finally, last week, I sat down and went, okay, this is what this is. This is what this is. And basically an updated catering proposal. And the bride came back and went, is that the Lexingtonian salad? I went, nope, that's the spring salad. We need to tweak that. But she caught it. Now, it's not a difference in price. It's just a difference in what we buy. Are we buying spring mix or are we buying baby romaine?
And two, it may be one of those things you had the conversation and she was doing that salad for 6 months. And then at the tasting, they're like, oh, let's change to this. You had that on your notes and you just overlooked it. And, you're working with 20 to 30 couples a year, whereas some caterers are working with 100 plus. It's very easy to make those mistakes. Please let your caterer know or any vendor know if you're looking at your contract or your banquet event order or anything and you see something that is not correct. Tell them because we don't know if you don't tell us. Talking about your signature drink, you walked me into the bar. This is always one topic I want to talk to you about because you have an engineering background. You like to know how everything works and the proper to everything. I feel like, and maybe this is just me, I feel like Kentucky has difficult liquor laws, and maybe it's just because my brain is not big enough to comprehend. Everything is different by county. It's different, I swear, from one day to the next day. I feel like it changes. I do feel like the biggest misconception that I hear when it comes to alcohol at weddings is when venues tell couples that they need a licensed bartender. Correct me if I'm wrong. A licensed bartender does not exist in the state of Kentucky.
It doesn't. And this is where to be honest, this is a lot of venues not wanting to be the bad guy. And so I'm the bad guy. I have a liquor license. If you're having a wedding and you're hiring us to cater it and you want to have alcohol, you have to get it through me. And I do that for twofold. One, I do make some money off of the bar. I don't believe that our pricing is out of line for what we provide. Our 4-hour open bar, which has makers and Buffalo Trace and Tito's and all of that on it, is $22 a person for a 4-hour open bar. You only pay for people over 21. And let's be honest, I know what I'm doing. I know how much to bring. I bring the mixers that the bartenders need. And I have openers and I have muddlers and I have shakers and I know to order ice and tonic water and soda water and mixers and all of the things. There are no licensed bartenders. What there are star certified bartenders. And what that means is that you have taken an online class that tells you how to spot a fake ID. It talks to you about cutting off people who should be cut off and things along those lines. The only people in the state that have quote unquote mobile liquor licenses are caterers. And what goes hand in hand with that is food. There has to be food. Some venues don't want to mix with alcohol. And I think that there are people that are bartending services that kind of muddle the water in there. At the end of the day, the issue is whether or not the insurance you bought will be valid. If you hire me, I have a liquor license. I am working legally, and God forbid something should happen. Hopefully you got wedding insurance and I have liquor liability insurance. And there we go. My fear is always when people do stuff in the gray area that if something should happen and the insurance company can find a way that they're not liable, they're going to worm their way out. I mean, that's just the reality. Some venues, they just hands off. And I get that. But the reality is that I'm going to bring it all. I'm going to pack it all up. If you go to Total Wine and buy all of this stuff, you have to get it to the venue. You have to make sure you buy all of it. And then what are you going to do with all of it when you're done?
I need to go back and do an updated graphic. I guess maybe I did that in 22 or 23, where I compared your pricing, Bayou Bluegrass Catering's pricing, to a bartending service where you bought the alcohol yourself. And they came out, I feel like almost even within like $100 or $200. And that was for literally you doing all of the work. If I can ever pay somebody to do all the work and it's the same amount, I'm going to. But
Right.
the one question I did want to ask about alcohol, I had actually not gotten this question until a couple days ago. And I was like, I am going to ask this on my podcast with Diane and then I'll report back. I have a couple getting married in Georgetown at a venue, and their contract is very vague. Shockingly, they are on a very tight budget, and I appreciate that they are wanting to stay in that budget. And they are considering having a cash bar. To have a
Oh,
cash bar in the state of Kentucky, that would have to be through a caterer with a liquor license and not just a bartender, correct?
yeah. The story I tell people that kind of goes hand in hand with this is I hadn't had my liquor license very long, and I get a phone call from someone who is obviously a younger gentleman. And they had gotten cited for selling alcohol without a license. Well, they were college kids. I know when I was in college, on more than one occasion, I might have gone to an apartment party. And when you got to the apartment party, they were giving you were giving them $5 and they were giving you a cup. And the kids were using that $5 to pay for the kegs they'd bought. That's technically selling alcohol without a license. So, yes, as soon as you want to have a cash bar, you absolutely need a caterer with a liquor license. And this is where circling back to the whole piece of this question, the way that the statute is written, the presumption is that if there is alcohol on a business premise, someone has to have a license because it's for sale because you're in a commercial space, which is why venues really probably do need to make caterers have liquor licenses or they need to be licensed themselves because they are businesses.
So what if it is a nonprofit
That's
facility?
gonna still fall under that. That's gonna
Okay.
still fall under that's gonna still fall under that. But,
Okay.
but if they're doing a cash bar, that absolutely the cash bar outside of everything else. Now where this gets complicated, it's less so now. Gosh, love the state of Kentucky. I moved here after college in June of 2000. I can remember when Lexington went wet on Sundays. It's a big deal. It's a big, big deal. We still have dry counties where this gets complicated. And more than that, we have dry counties. We have counties that part of the county is wet and part of the county is dry. My office is located in a specific area because for years and years, Jessamine County, which is where we're based, was dry while the city of Nicholasville was wet. So at some point, they changed the law that I, as a caterer, could sell an open bar in a dry county because the sale happened at my office. So I could transport if it was an open bar, but I couldn't run a cash bar. So that's the other thing you have to pay attention to is where is this wedding? Is it in a dry county? Is it in a dry part of the county? Or is it in a wet part of the county?
And I do want to say this, and then we'll move on because we could talk about alcohol for literally all day long, and we would still not talk about everything related to it. But just want to say that in the state of Kentucky, the ABC, which is the Alcohol and Beverage Control, they have shown up at venues. They have shown up at weddings before. I know of several instances. So don't ever think that don't chance it. Those are fines and things that I would not want to have to deal with. So don't have to scare anybody or anything, but that is a reality. When it comes to anything alcohol, you want to make sure that you are doing everything correct.
Let's be honest, one doesn't want to get in trouble with ABC. And I mean, I tend to be risk averse is the term I use about myself. It's like, you know what? Oh, if it could go wrong, it might go wrong. Let's not do that. And that's where I am with alcohol. And the thing, I think we talked about this last year when we talked about alcohol, that I will say is the big reason to hire, whether you hire a bartending service or you hire a caterer with a license, to hire real bartenders instead of, oh, I have so and so as a friend and they'll do it, is alcohol at weddings can go south. And my job at the end of the day is to make sure your guests get home safely. And so my bartenders are going to cut people off. They're going to pour lightly if they need to, or if they decide that somebody needs to be cut off, they'll cut them off. I mean, I was standing by the bar. It was the end of the night at a wedding. This was several years ago, and a younger guy had obviously had a fair amount. I was like, "Hey, how are you getting home?" And he kind of like was mouthy with me, and I was like, "Great, you're done." And he just kind of looked at me, and I was like, "I want to make sure you are not getting in a car." Beyond that, it's like, you failed the test. The test was, how are you getting home? I'm Ubering. So and so's my DD. Great. Mouthy with me, none of your business. Is like, actually it is. You're done.
Especially if you are at venues that are outside of town and on windy roads. Think about all of those things and whether you're providing transportation. Again, okay, we have to get off alcohol because we'll talk about it all day long. I always like to have Diane, of course, at the beginning of each of the years for podcasting. And I'll always ask her, what do you want to talk about this year? What have you experienced in the past year? What can we do as a whole, as an industry? What can we do to make things better for vendors? What can we do to make things better for couples? And the topic that Diane shared with me that she wanted to chat about a little bit this year was not something that wasn't really on my radar. Like, we've talked about it as a whole, and I know the difference in these things. And it kind of comes back to where a lot of us just get used to these things. And it's just, I think everybody else knows those, but people don't. Diane, walk me into a little bit of what you actually wanted to talk about today, 45 minutes into the podcast now.
I thought we should talk about the role of planner, Sarah, because this is one of those. I can remember when I got started. Now, mind you, I've been doing this a long time, and there was a period of my life where I sold 5 appetizers for $14.50 a person. It's been a long time since that was the pricing. And the issue becomes that, just like you don't have to have a license to become a bartender, there are a lot of people who are wedding planners, or they're wedding coordinators, or they offer day of coordination. And I find probably me, the photographer, the band, and the DJ, kind of those are the people most impacted by the wedding planner. And I have told all of my friends, so I'm 48. I have a senior in high school, so I am not quite to the planning wedding stage, but it's coming. I have looked at all my friends. Even one of my great friends has been in event planning for years. She runs an event that makes a ton of money for charity every year. I've looked at all of them and have said, when people start getting married, we will be paying for full service planners. Period. Stop. That's what we're doing. And here's the difference. That person walks with you all through the wedding planning process. And when you don't know what you're doing, which most people planning a wedding don't know what they're doing, that is irreplaceable. And most of the time, that planner will pay for themselves because they will do a better job of managing many of the aspects of wedding planning that they will save you enough money to, if not pay for themselves, come close. And the big difference is, from my perspective, even coordination and everything. Now, this depends on how complicated the wedding is. I live in a world of very complicated weddings. I do a lot of plated meals, a lot of guest choice plated, lots of balls in the air. Having a full service planner makes a difference. Or at the very least, if you are hiring somebody that is coordination, somebody that, okay, when do they walk beside you? Do they walk beside you at 6 months? Do they walk beside you 30 days out? Where do they come? And it's really hard with complicated weddings for somebody to get fully locked into what the wedding looks like if they only take it on 30 days out. We had a couple of different coordination weddings that went a little south, and not so south because that it was the coordinator's fault per se. It was that the expectation of what the bride thought they were getting did not equate what they had paid for. I stay till the end at my weddings. Why? Because everybody deals with me. I answer all the emails and all the phone calls. And so there was a time that occasionally I would have a friend who could come in and they could pitch hit for me. And I've just gotten to the point that I don't want to do that. The stress of that, I don't enjoy my vacation if I know that my staff is trying to do a wedding and I'm not there to do it. So, but all of the institutional knowledge of your wedding that I have because I started talking to you 12 months ahead, it's difficult to duplicate if you just have somebody that comes aboard 30 days. The other thing is, I think that clearly defining, okay, what are you doing? Who's cleaning up? Okay, you bought chargers instead of renting them. Great. But all of those chargers come packed in, if you buy them from Hobby Lobby or Michael's, in a box of 10. They're all in a paper sleeve. They all have a little bit of like foam between them. Okay, who's unpacking them? If they have these nasty, obnoxious stickers on them, who's taking those stickers off? Okay, at the end of the night, who's dealing with all of those chargers? Because my staff will clear them. They might even wipe them off if they get messy, but they're going to put them in a stack somewhere on a table, and somebody has to deal with them. You're borrowing things. I had a client, they borrowed a bunch of derby glasses. And they had coordination. So somebody was responsible for repacking all the derby glasses because they weren't racks of water glasses from the rental company that we were putting back up. Who's taking the flowers, returning? Sometimes florists, most people's floral quote will talk about setup and breakdown. So, and it also depends on your venue. If your venue has multiple events, then everything leaves at the end of the night. And the truth of the matter is, no one wants your vases at the end of the night. The catering staff doesn't. The venue doesn't want him. Nobody. And everybody's like, well, I'll just leave it. It's like, no. If we do 30, 40 weddings a year, we don't want these things. No. So somebody has to do that. Just same issue with who's going to fill your buffet and all of that, what we talked about with the catering piece. With the planning / coordination piece, I find that there tends to be a real disconnect. And where there's the biggest disconnect are full service planners that also do some coordination. They're great. But they also have a contract that lays out very clearly to their clients what they're going to do. And they're really good at communicating it. It's the people that do a little bit of coordination as a hobby. And they might be really good at it, but there tends to be a disconnect between what the bride and her mom thinks. Well, I hired a planner. No, you didn't. You hired a day of coordinator, and they're going to meet you 2 weeks before the wedding and do stuff. And your responsibility is to do this, that, and the other. Full service planners, stuff gets shipped to the planner. Planner brings it to the venue. Planner ships stuff back. I mean, that's probably, and we're affected because when the coordinator says, yeah, I'm done at 10 o'clock, and I'm like, but we don't end until 11. I sit there and go, who's doing this, that, and the other? Because there's all kinds of stuff that still needs to be broken down. Who's packing up the memory table? Who's taking the cake knife and the toasting glasses? All of that stuff. So that's probably the piece that I find the biggest disconnect. And if you plan to have a plated meal with guest choice, you really need a full service planner because that requires a fair amount of paperwork and knowledge between the planner and me so that we can execute it to everyone's satisfaction. I don't want to be, it's called auctioning food. When you walk up to the table and went, who got the steak? Who got the salmon? I think it's tacky as can be. But if the floor plan that you give me with where the guests are seated does not match where they're actually seated, that's what we have to do. We have to go to the table and go, hi, I'm looking for Bobby. They are my vegetarian. And when everybody at the table goes, oh, nobody's named Bobby here. Oh, they moved. They moved to that table over here. I'm dying inside. Staff, I mean, so there's my plug for our full service planners.
Okay.
I just were vomited to you, Sarah.
No, all of that was great. So my next question for you is, how important is the amount of Instagram followers that a wedding planner or any business has? Does that equate to being a really good planner, or does that matter?
That's a loaded question. I tell people,
Do you want me to ask it in a different way?
No, I tell people I'm old, at least, and in wedding land, I am old. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and you have to be willing to give up a lot of Saturdays to still be in this business. And it works in my life and my family's life for me to have done this. But there are an awful lot of people who do this when they're younger and they leave. So by the time they're 35, they're out of the wedding piece. So I've seen a lot, I've done a lot. And I watch Instagram and I buy stuff off of Instagram more than I post to Type A Catering's Instagram. I think that when you look at people's Instagram, it's a double-edged sword and can be very deceiving. Because depending on the other vendors at a wedding, sometimes a planner gets the benefit and sometimes they don't of the work of others. But if you want Instagram followers, you can pay for them. I always tell people, if you're hiring a wedding photographer, look at some albums. Even I can occasionally take a picture that's Instagram worthy. Can I take a wedding's worth of Instagram worthy wedding photos? Not a chance in Hades. But I do one. Every once in a while I'll take one. I'm like, oh, I did good. This is a great picture. But if you look at a full album, I would say the same thing. If you are hiring a wedding planner, I would talk to references. I'd ask your venue. Most venues have lists of people they recommend, and they recommend them for a reason. And I know, I remember when I was starting out as a caterer and we weren't on people's approved catering lists, and you would be like, but we're really good. We clean up after ourselves. Our food's good. And it's a process to get there. On the flip side, there's a reason why people do that, because they have vetted those people. So if you're considering a wedding planner, if they have not come recommended from close family, friends, good people that you would know and trust, interview them, ask for some references. I mean, if every once in a while I have somebody go, do you have any references? And I have a handful of people that I can pick up the phone and go, hey, I've got somebody, they want to talk to you. And they'll say, and now, am I going to ever give you anybody's name that's not going to say glowing things? No. But a red flag is if you don't have people.
Do you think at the end of the day, a wedding planner using a wedding planner for full service planning pays for itself at the end?
Depends. This is where, just like this is what I charge for a bar, this is what somebody else charges for a bar. What wedding planners charge varies. Some people it's flat, some it's a percentage. And so that also plays in there. On the flip side, the wedding planner that's charging a percentage is doing that because they're doing a wedding that is large, complicated, and expensive. And they need to be able to account for that in what they charge, because they're also going to need to bring in more people. I think in most cases, yes, they should pay for themselves either in the finances or in the burden they take off the bride and her mom, because that also cannot be replaced, because you want to enjoy that day. I mean, I had a mother of the bride tell me once, I have one daughter and hopefully we'll do one wedding and I want to enjoy it. And that's where we're at. That I think that paying for a full service planner. Now, if you're doing a really small wedding and you don't have a big budget, you also have less expectations for what that planner is doing. But the moment we start hitting 35, 40, 50, 75, $100,000 for a wedding, full service planner all the way. And the other thing is that we just had this happen. We had a client, they started the process really a long time ago, almost 2 years out. And at the time, they hired somebody that's a full service planner, but it also offers coordination like 6 months out. And they decided that, you know what? Wedding's not for another 10 months. It's obvious we need more help with this. So they went to the planner and they went, you know what? We think we need to add full planning. And so they did. So, I mean, that's the other thing is if you don't start with full planning, but it becomes obvious that maybe you need it, it's something you can usually add. The other caveat I will put out there is it also depends on how much work you want to do. When a full service planner contacts me, they've already talked to the bride. But instead of the bride talking to me and talking to 3 other caterers to get some quotes, the planner does that. The planner emails 3 of us and says, hey, are you available on this date? This is what the client's looking for. Da 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 da. Can you put a quote together? So part of it, like our clients where they're like, we've got several weddings where bride and groom, one or both of them are physicians in residency. They do not have time to be out there doing all of this. So their planner does it. So that's the other thing is do you have the time to reach out to all your vendors? And the other thing is, quite frankly, planners have vetted vendors.
So we're talking about pricing for vendors or for planners in particular. So you'll have your full service planners that are a flat fee, and then you'll have some that are going to be on the higher end that are more of a percentage base. Um, and that's one of those, like when I meet with a couple based on what they tell me and what I learned from them about their personality, what they're looking for, what their budget is, I have certain planners that I recommend for certain things. I have certain planners that I recommend for certain venues because they work at these venues a lot. They know them well. Or if it is a wedding on a private farm where there's going to be a tent, there are planners that I'm going to recommend for that. I'm not going to recommend somebody that has probably been doing this 5 years or less because there's so many things that can happen. And um, if you are using a planner and they have never been at this venue before, I would ask a million questions about their experience, especially if it is an outdoor venue, if you're doing a room flip. There are reasons why the planners that are going to be the percentage based are at the level that they're at. And then one of the other things that I always like to mention, there are some planners that also do florals. That's one of the areas that sometimes it can be easier almost if your planner does the flowers, especially if you're moving like ceremony flowers into the reception because they know how they're put up there, they're tied up there, that kind of thing. But if
Yeah.
it is someone that is a little newer to the industry and they're going to be doing both of those, you're going to want to know how many assistants they're going to have there that day, who's going to be doing what, because we want to know that all of those flowers are going to be made ahead of time so that they can just be set on the table. And if the planner is moving the flowers from the ceremony to the reception, who is going to be in charge of the guests during that time? We want to
Yeah.
make sure there's so many of those kind of small things that when you are hiring a planner and they're doing multiple jobs that day, we want to make sure that they have enough staff that are going to be there to also help facilitate that. like you mentioned, Castle Key, for example, you have the ceremony in one space, cocktail hour in another space, and then the reception in another space. They are all spread out. Like you can take a golf cart between them because they're all spread out. Sometimes you do for your older guests. And you want to make sure that you have enough staff there that can handle that. Sometimes you're not just hiring the planner themselves, you're hiring additional staff that day to help set up and break down those different areas to kind of be there, be crowd control, those kind of things. And a lot of times I will hear that the planner is so expensive. I don't understand why it costs this just for even a day of planner. You think about, by the time they have staff, you do however many meetings with a planner. And if it's a full service planner and you go out and you're doing several site visits, a planner, you're going to spend more time with them than probably your fiance during the planning process. I think a planner is probably one of your most valuable things when it comes to the wedding, especially if you're spending probably 40, 50,000 or more. I would absolutely find money in there to have a full service planner.
Agreed.
For a million reasons.
Yeah.
I know we've talked about all kinds of things today, and we've talked way more than I intended for us to talk. But it's always great to start the year off. Do you have any final words or any words of wisdom for couples and parents that are in the wedding planning season right now?
I used to do this talk called The Wedding Grinch, and it was all about numbers. It was all about math. And that I know we don't like doing math as a nation, but I would say that probably the most beneficial thing you can do is spend some time in the beginning working on a budget and then do a good job of getting quotes, reading your quotes. And the other thing, a wedding planner used to refer to it as sparkle money. And I love that term. She would say, take your budget and then either take 10% off of it or add 10%, whatever the number is. So if you had them, if you randomly, I mean, I've had clients that go, well, our wedding budget is 50 grand. And there was a number they pulled out of the air. They could afford for it to be more. They could afford for it to be less. They just picked that number because that sounded like a reasonable number. And so I would tell you, if your budget is 50 grand, but you can go higher, in your head, go, okay, the goal is to be at 55 and leave that 10%, that 5 grand for the end. Because if stuff comes in less, then great, you're good. But knowing that you have that 5 grand that you've kind of budgeted for, but you haven't spent, is your sparkle money, is the upgraded napkin, is a few more flowers on cocktail tables, is deciding you want gelato because your wedding's in August and instead of doing cheese and charcuterie, you're going to do gelato for your guests after the ceremony. It's adding espresso martinis to the bar. It's your sparkle money. It's the fun money. Because that's the problem, is people spend all their money in the beginning and then they have no money left and then they're unhappy. And the goal is you want to be happy on your wedding day. It's supposed to be the happiest day of your life. I've been married for almost 21 years now. It's like I love my husband and he could have cared less about the wedding that I planned. I tell my mom now I'd plan a different wedding. And yes, 48-year-old Diane would plan a different wedding than 27-year-old Diane did. But I still have great memories from that day. And that's what you want. You want to look back on that day and think, oh, wasn't that great? Didn't we have the most fun? And if you're stressing about money, you won't. So that would be my advice. Leave yourself some sparkle money so your day sparkles.
So I'm not actually sure who the planner was that said that, but I'm going to start using that. I didn't really have a term for what that was, but I will say that my version of sparkle money is 25% of the budget, because like we talked about, you just don't know what things cost. And the more you get into it, the more you're like, I'll spend $100 here. What's another 100? And then that just keeps spiraling. As it gets toward the end, you want paper products and you want XY, you want the gelato. So realistically, I say if your budget is $20,000, we're probably going to have closer to the $25,000 to $27,000 wedding. In my experience, you're typically going to go over about 25% of the budget. So I always say keep that in mind in the beginning. Sparkle money. Diane, thank you again for joining me. Wedding planning doesn't have to be overwhelming, and you don't have to do it alone. If you want guidance you can trust, I would love to help. At Simply Love Studio, I offer free wedding consultations where we talk through your vision, your budget, and what steps make the most sense for you. There's no pressure, no obligations, no catches, no gimmicks, just honest advice and support to help you move forward with confidence. You can schedule your free consult anytime at simplylovestudio.com, and I promise you'll walk away with clarity and a plan.